Hi, everyone. Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation, the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, which Rose will put up the link, but oh my God, was one of 2.5, million listeners or something. It just was one of the top podcasts. We were so thrilled to be put in the category in the reviews that I can't remember the name, but go listen to Why Do Pets Matter and you'll understand why. And of course, this MAAP community call, which happens every Wednesday night because we know how important your pets are to you and how much you want to make sure they're cared for. Tonight, we're going to talk about three things. And of course, we're going to check in with everyone who's here so we can make sure everybody tells us what they've been up to. But the three things I'd really like to talk about tonight is whether or not the dogs being turned in at rescues are actually so many more than were turned in 2019. As we know, 2020 was an anomaly year where no dogs were turned in. And in fact, dogs were taken all over the place. And whether or not the numbers being turned in are greater than 2019, and whether the dogs turned in, if there's a way for us to help that not occur. I'm going to talk briefly about handlers who have people's pets, because the people who hand their dogs to handlers, as well as the handlers themselves, should really have a MAAP plan in case something happens to the owner or something happens to the handler. And finally, I'm going to touch upon an article that I've written with a bunch of my colleagues from the New York State Bar Association regarding pet insurance, why you should have it, what it means, and how to do your due diligence to find out what you might need. So without further ado, I'm going to check in with everybody first. So I'm going to check in with you, Sally. How are the girls?
The girls are great. We're having a heat wave here on the East Coast. And I believe heat index of 105 tomorrow. So they're basically already saying stay inside and find air conditioning, which fortunately we can do.
Yeah, and that's so hard for young dogs. We were talking before we came online, Sally and I, that one of our friends has a 1-year-old, maybe an 18-month-old Irish setter puppy, and telling her to stay inside, regardless of the fact when her paws hit the pavement, they burn off. Sometimes Irish setters have no sense, no feeling, and so they continue to go outside in 105-degree temperature. But it's hard to keep these young dogs in. That might segue us into whether or not dogs are being dropped off, because it is hard. And it's something you have to really consider. I posted on, I believe, Hamilton Law Mediation or my Deborah Hamilton, and I think my LinkedIn and my Twitter, there was a great article on making sure your pets are safe in the heat that Tom Van Winkler, who's a guest on Why Do Pets Matter, put up. So go look for that. It's a fabulous article that talks about what you need to do to keep your pet safe. So Sally, keep those girls safe. They're old, and I'm sure they let you know. Well, maybe not Roxy, because she's like the human dynamo, but Athena at least lets you know when we need to turn around and go home if Roxy isn't smart enough to do that.
Yep, they're smart. They let you, they're little indicators. It's like, this is too much. I want to go, but we should go home.
Yeah, they put their blinkers on that they're making a U-turn. Perfect. So, Susan, how's everything going? I hope you listened to Kathy Madson's Why Do Pets Matter interview. She had her second one, or maybe we ran her first one because it was so good again. I know she's spoken to us twice, but how are things going with Maggie?
I'm sorry I missed that with Kathy. I've been so incredibly busy recently.
That's right. It's on forever. So it's not like you have to, listen to it at a certain time. It's just on the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, and you can go back to it and listen to it whenever.
Okay, I plan to. Maggie is good. She is a little variable because she sometimes can really respond to the recommendations, and there's times when she's barking, and I can tolerate it, but my son has less of a tolerance for it.
Well, that's based on everything that he's dealing with at the same time. So yeah, it's hard.
And so that does cause a little bit of distress for me. And, she's a wonderful dog. Yeah, she's a wonderful dog. I mean, she comes into bed, she pushes her body against my legs every night. It's like, I'm stuck to you.
She's such a big dog and such a little body when it comes to sharing the bed.
Yeah, she really, it's really cute. And I do have the pet insurance. I mean, that was really important to me anytime I've gotten a dog or a cat, it's very important for me to have that little bit of peace of mind knowing, yeah, I'll be able to pay for the medical care because I've already set aside this money every month. And yeah, so she's loved, she's cared about. We're working our tails off to help her manage her behavior. So
well, as we said at the beginning when we started this journey with you, which we're so excited that every week, there's 2 steps forward, maybe 1 step back, but it took her, she's what, 2.5 now?
She just she's going to have her second birthday on the 14th.
Oh, good. So it took her a year to get here, and she unfortunately had her first year during COVID.
Yes, exactly. So yeah,
but there are a lot of things that have to be corrected just because of COVID, and we all weren't normal. So the things we would have done when we had a new puppy wasn't what we were doing because we were all in lockdown, not knowing what was happening.
Yeah.
And we may be going there again. Who knows with the Delta virus?
I know.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not. I'm
I
not
hope
hoping
not.
for that. I have to say that my son lives in Florida, and he had to go to the emergency room last night because he cut himself and needed a few stitches, Thomas. And I said to him, please, God, wear a mask and don't sit near anyone. Don't do anything. And he sent me a picture of the emergency room that was non-COVID, and there was only one other person in the emergency room with him. So that was really good. And he was in and out in like 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So that was really great because they have the doing the different things for making sure that they're separating everyone, at least at the hospital level. If the governor wants everybody to, commingle, great. But at least the medical people and the school people, some of them seem to think that their governors are not necessarily on the right page, especially with the high cases of COVID in younger children. I mean, they can't be vaccinated yet because they don't qualify. So let's be a little smarter.
Problem. Yeah. I mean, I just really
right.
Understand
right.
that.
But that has nothing to do for the MAAP plan. But it does, because if you're sick, you have to have a plan for your pet, or if your kids are sick, remember I said
everything's connected.
Yeah, absolutely. The MAAP plan doesn't just work for when you're sick. If your kid's sick in the hospital, you have no time to take care of your pet. And that'll perfectly segue into why dogs are being returned to shelters, because maybe they just don't have time to take care of the pet because maybe somebody's sick, or maybe someone has to go back to work, or whatever it is. And it's been sort of the balanced argument of, well, actually, returns to shelters are not any bigger than they were in 2019. It's just that now people are returning dogs to shelters as opposed to adopting from shelters. The other issue is that people are returning their dogs because they probably never should have adopted a dog in the first place, but did because they were home for COVID. And didn't listen to the MAAP plan program where we could have helped them navigate their next steps when they went back to work or went back to school, because that's what we do here. And they just threw up their hands and said, no more, I can't do it, which doesn't really help the pet very much, doesn't help the kids very much, or maybe the family as a total, because, of course, letting your dog go after you've lived with it for a year, even if it's a terrorist, right, Susan, you really would miss it, right? I mean,
and what are you modeling for your children? What are you showing them when the times get rough?
Right.
We just, yeah.
Yeah. And I always want to say to everyone, listen, if you really can't keep your pet, don't keep your pet, because we never want a pet to stay in a situation where the person, can't keep it. Either the personality isn't right, or they can't afford the food, or whatever. I never want a dog to be locked in a room, never looked at. That's terrible. Return the dog. But if you need help in how to navigate the issues you found with the dog, or how to navigate planning for the care of the pet, that's why we're here every Wednesday night. That's what we do. We help you think outside the box, because we're objective, we're neutral. We really want to help everyone find a way to keep their pets in their lives, even if it's something you think, oh my God, I never can. I mean, because Susan, right, you were like, oh my God, I'm at wit's end with Maggie, and we connected you with Kathy Madsen, and there's a little bit of a light in the tunnel. You might not be at the end of the tunnel, but you're in the tunnel. So that's what we do here. We help you do that. So the second one I really wanted to talk about, because I have a client right now who's a handler, and she's taking dogs all over the country. So if you're listening and you're a handler or you're an owner who gives your dog to a handler, you really need to have a MAP plan in place, because if something happens to you while the dog's on the road, the handler needs to know what to do with your dog, and it needs to be in writing. I know the P of publish is the most important piece. Please don't just talk to Sally, your handler, about what you want. You need to have it in writing because you own that dog. And also for the handlers to protect themselves, you really need to have something in writing, because if you don't own that dog, you can't really care for that dog. You really need to have something in writing. I have a dog out with a handler right now, and I sent them my MAP release for my dog. And they said, "What's this?" I said, "Well, if something happens to you, everyone knows that this is what's to happen." I said, "And if something happens to me, everyone knows this is what's going to happen." And they go, "We've never had any of this." I said, "I know, because nobody does this, but I want you to know what to do with Junie if something happens to me. And I want to know that everyone who's out at the dog show knows what to do with Junie if both of you happen to drop dead from heat stroke." I said, "I want people to know, because I don't want Junie to just go to the worst thing in the world," which people don't understand is sometimes, if your dog goes to animal care and control, as we've talked about a number of times, they can be adopted out if nobody knows. Or sometimes there are ordinances in the state that require the dog to be altered or spayed before they're returned to you. And that would be really terrible for my Juniper, because he is my stud dog, and to lose the ability to use him on my pedigree would be awful. So make sure, if you're an owner or a handler, you have this MAP plan out with your handler, and get it from your owner. And finally, I want to get back to both of you, but let me just sneak this in here. Susan, you talked about pet insurance. It is so important to have pet insurance, and there are so many different kinds. So you can have wellness insurance, you can have catastrophic insurance, you can have a deductible, you can have one that really works to enable you to cover both catastrophic and wellness. You just have to take some time. When I was doing the research for the New York State Bar Association's article, there are so many plans out there, and some of them that I'm familiar with didn't come up. So that's how many plans are out there. The top 10 didn't include the ones, well, one of them did, Pet Safe, I think I have, or Pet something I have. But my Trupanion didn't come up on any of the top 10, and I think they're great. The other piece is that if you're thinking of buying from a breeder, ask them if they have insurance for their brood bitch or stud dog. Ask them if they're part of AKC or Trupanion, and there are 2 or 3 other insurance programs that give breeders a break on enrolling their puppies in the insurance program. They either give you a 30-day free trial, that's AKC, or Trupanion waives the waiting time. So usually you need 48 hours or 2 weeks or whatever to make sure the dog doesn't come down with something. But if you buy from a breeder who's part of the Trupanion breeder plan, that time is waived. So your dog, from the minute you pick it up, is covered. So these are things that you really want to know if you're buying a dog from a breeder. Ask them if they are a member of any of the insurance programs so that you can take advantage of the benefits of buying a dog from a reputable. AKC requires the breeders to be have-a-heart breeders or breeders of merit, and Trupanion doesn't require that. So you just have to check out the program. So if I can try to get 1 or 2 people to buy insurance for their dogs in this recording, I will be thrilled, because it really, as Susan said, it gives you the opportunity to provide the dogs with the care you want them to have. And I'll give you an example. So my dog Atticus lives with my friend Susie, and he got a nettle in his paw 2 years ago. The paw blew up. They did surgery. They took the nettle out. And then about 6 months ago, he started limping again. And sure enough, there was a small piece of infected nettle in his paw. So now he is going to aquatherapy and physical therapy and laser twice a week. And it's costing probably $500 a visit. And all but $100 is covered at every visit. And so instead of paying $500 a visit, Susie's paying $100 a visit. And of course, because I co-own him, we share it. But this is amazing that this is something that's going to happen. So if you can pay the premiums, and your dog is a healthy cow like Roxy her entire life, and you never get to use any of the money on insurance, that's great. So you just donate it up to the dogs like Atticus, who needed to use the insurance. And maybe next time your dog will get to use your insurance. But I truly feel that everybody should have insurance. So now I'm going to stop talking so much and check in with Susan first and then Sally about what you think about the dogs being dropped off at rescue, and about insurance. I know, Susan, you said you had insurance and it gives you really good peace of mind. But maybe comment, if you would, on what you think the increase in drop-offs at shelters might be the result of, and whether or not it really is as great as it was in 2019 or greater.
Honestly, I'm not in touch with the numbers. I don't know, but I think people felt lonely during the pandemic, and so they gravitated toward getting a dog, and without maybe thinking about what was involved, what was needed, and the responsibility and everything. It's not just a dog. That dog becomes part of your family. And I just worry about, what are you teaching your children when you bring a dog back to a shelter? Oh, I've had you for a year and now I'm done with you. I don't need you anymore. It's a really difficult thing to think about. And
Yeah.
I don't really know the answer of why, but I could guess that might be part of it. And yeah, I mean, these people, if they can't care for the dog, they could put it in a doggy daycare. There's options out there. And
yeah, that's why we talk about the MAAP plan, because you've always got those options. You've got people who might be able to step up and take it for a month or 2 or 3 rather than going to a shelter.
Yeah, so I think it's disturbing that dogs are being taken back to a shelter.
Yeah, dogs and cats, I think. And what about the insurance? You're really happy about that insurance, right?
Well, I had Nationwide before with my other 2 dogs, and I got the highest level of coverage that I could get. And then toward the end, they started to really not cover very well a lot of different things. So this time I'm with Healthy Paws. It was recommended by Consumer Reports, and I'm only getting the illness coverage. So I'm paid for all the wellness care, which I don't, I expect to do that. But it's only costing me about $30 or $40 a month. I don't remember exactly. And it's a little bit of peace of mind. And I hope, I have never used it, Deborah.
Yeah, so you're like me and Roxy. So the one thing you really do, I'm so glad you said it because it triggered in my brain. The one thing you have to realize and ask is, as the dog ages, does the coverage lessen? Because you will need the coverage more when the dog is older, likely, than when the dog is younger. So you really need to make sure that the coverage stays either intact, or doesn't deplete or depress once the dog gets older. So thank you, Susan. That was such insightfulness about, how important, showing your children how to care for a pet is, and also that, you did your research and found an insurance policy that was going to be good for you and for Maggie, although you've never used it, but hopefully never will. You'll be the Roxy instead of the Athena. Athena has run out her money like nobody's business, but I digress. So Sally, what about you? So I know that you brought that up to me today about the rescues. And so does Audrey think that this is bigger than the 2019 drop-offs?
Well, I was actually, Gordon and I are thinking of going away in the spring. So I was looking for a dog sitter. And I said, I don't know if we'll have 1 or 2 dogs here in the spring, but, and I said, are you okay? You sound like overwhelmed. And they said, we have so many dogs here at the shelter. I go, what kind of dogs? They said, well, we have big dogs that aren't very well trained. And we don't have enough people to train them right now because of COVID and the pandemic. We don't have a lot of volunteers who have the ability to train dogs and walk dogs.
And foster them, right, exactly.
And she goes, every day we get lap dogs. She goes, lots of lap dogs. And she goes, these are all pandemic dogs. They're now being turned in. She goes, they're cute little lap dogs. She goes, they come in and they go out right away. They're not from this shelter. People are not going back to the shelter they got them from. They just drop them off and say, well, and they make it like.
Or they're breeder dogs that they're not calling the breeder. And I wonder if they signed a contract and the breeder doesn't know because they didn't keep in touch, because that's the breeder heartbreak. So if you sell your dogs to someone and they don't call you and drop it off at a shelter, how will you know unless somebody calls and tells you?
Exactly, Deborah. And the woman whom I was speaking with said that her favorite story was, which happened just before I called, she goes, well, I'd like to drop off this Chihuahua. And they go, well, why? You know, you've had the dog 5 years.
Oh my goodness.
We're buying a new house and the house is haunted and the dog is frightened by the haunted house. I said,
well, that makes sense, actually. That's thinking in the dog's best interest, if that's true.
And they said, didn't you like call in like someone to smoke sage and brush it around, or someone to, you know, feng shui? And they said, she said, I just knew he was lying. For some reason, they didn't want this dog to move to the new house. And they said, where did you get the dog from? And it was 2 towns away from here, but they were not going back to where the dog came from. They're dropping it off. So I think, as Susan says, she's talking about the family, but they're not going back to the shelter to tell them, no, I don't want the dog anymore. They're going to a different shelter to return it. So,
right. Or they're not going back to the breeder because they don't want the breeder to know that they failed. And so they just drop it off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And maybe the breeder wouldn't take it back anyway, because, you know, some people breed because it was such a cash crop during COVID to have puppies and then sell them. And they're really cute. But then you don't really want them back if they don't work out.
No, you want the cute puppies that everybody loves, that are fluffy and look like toys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But lap dogs are sort of puppies forever. So it is unfortunate. And I guess you said, if I heard you right, that the lap puppies come in and go out.
Yes, they do. But the big dogs, that they're having a little bit of, personality or training.
They probably paid a lot of money for the Labradoodles and the rest of them.
Yeah, those dogs don't go out so fast, and they just stay there for a long, long, long time. And, we have a shortage of
help.
Walk and help. Yeah.
And what's interesting is that, you spend a lot of money on these dogs, you buy them, and because of, and rightfully so, there's nobody to help you train the dog either. You have to really be ingenious, like Susan was, and came on this call and found Kathy Madsen, who's been helping her via Zoom and things, to make sure that you get the training you need for your dog. And that's a little bit out of some people's bandwidth. But you've got this dog. And when the dog is bigger and naughty, you need fosters who are really good to help them become good citizens. And that's, walking on a leash and sitting and, not jumping and things. And because of COVID and because of the new Delta variant, we probably were better 3 months ago at helping dogs become good citizens than we are now, because we can't have as many people in the site. I don't think Connecticut has shut anything down yet, but I know that some states have really cracked down on at least using masks.
Yeah, they have. And actually, Deborah, last weekend I went to the farmer's market and got out of the car, and there were 30 people and 30 dogs walking. I go, it's a training class. And there were all these dogs in the farmer's market, all perfect, well-behaved, walking next to her. I go, that's a very successful, and it was Parks and Rec.
Yeah. I mean, Parks and Rec do trainings all the time and usually have really good trainings. And of course, Connie isn't here tonight because she has a meeting, but she does outdoor training with her training club as well all the time. And it's really important to do it. And it's really important. They might train somewhere else, but to have the dogs behave at the farmer's market is the true test of whether or not your dog is bomb-proof, and whether or not it's going to behave. So that is incredibly important. So I'm so glad you brought it up, because it is a little troubling. We all want the dogs to live in their forever homes. unless they're forever homes, don't want them anymore truly, and then that's not really a good forever home. So let's drop them off. But if you had a MAP plan, you would have already asked your neighbor or the breeder or, the shelter or whomever, maybe somebody at the vet. If something happened to me, would you take them for a little while? And then you could have either gotten a reprieve or maybe found a new home for the pet rather than dropping it off at the shelter. So that's why the MAP plan is so important, because it doesn't just mean that the pet finds a home, we hope, because something happened to you, short-term, long-term. But if something happens and you can't keep it, then you have a plan to move forward and have your pet go. And I know, Sally, you do know that the two wild women of Borneo that live with you do have pet insurance, because they're older. They're 12 and they're 11. And so now is the time when all good children tend to drive their parents crazy.
No.
Yes, with their old woman issues like skin and weight, and Sally shared with us that Roxy was taken out by a drawer that was open, and she didn't miss a beat, thank God, because that's Roxy. But those kind of things happen, and when you're a 2 or 3 year old puppy, that doesn't harm you as much as, say, when you're older. And I did put up, so everybody should check my posts as well. I did put up how to treat a puppy when you first get it. It was on Facebook, it was on LinkedIn, it was on Twitter, because people don't understand that when you get a puppy, an 8 to 10 or 12-week-old puppy, you can't pick it up by its arms. You have to be really gentle with it because none of its growth plates have closed. So unless you treat it with gentleness and kindness, you can accidentally do irreparable damage to a growth plate by accident. Also, recognizing you cannot take, even though you want to because you want them to sleep the rest of the day, a 3-month-old puppy on a mile hike or a mile run, because they will run with you because they love you, and they will drop dead on the ground, but they will run with you. But you'll be doing so much concussion damage to their underdeveloped growth plates that when they are Athena and Roxy's age, they're going to have terrible arthritis. So make sure that if you have a puppy, you read that article, or as I put out in the Irish Setter Club of America, I said to all the breeders, send this home with your puppy owners because they probably don't know.
And Deborah, there are all kinds of signs, we are having a heat wave, if the dog is vomiting or lethargic, it could be any number of things, not drinking enough water, and pay attention to all those signs because it could be extremely serious. And you should.
Absolutely. And your dog might not be giving you as many good signs as you might need to see if they're okay. And sometimes we're really glad when a 6 or 8 month old puppy is laying down being quiet.
Yeah.
But I always think that if a 6 or 8 month old puppy is laying down being quiet, there is something seriously wrong. Because unless they're in a crate, really and even if they're in a crate because you just took them back from a hot walk outside in 105 degrees real field temperature, you really do need to make sure that they are getting the right kind of care, because it is key. So as we wrap up, because this is always my favorite time, Susan, let us know what was the best thing that happened to you this week.
I'm having a rough week, actually, so I'm trying to think. I think Maggie being close to me and comforting me with her presence at times.
And that's what they do. That's what they do best.
Sorry.
No, that's what they do best, and that's why we have them. Hey, Sally, what's the best thing that happened to you this week?
I don't know if it's the best thing. I've turned into the human pillow. So now both dogs bound upstairs, put their heads on me, and I'm like, what's wrong with this picture? But it's not so bad. Unconditional love is not so bad.
I know, in 105-degree heat, it really can sometimes get a little warm.
There is AC in the bedroom.
Yay, because it can get a little warm. So until next week, guys, thank you so much for being here. It's Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law and Mediation, the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, and of course, my MAAP community. Remember, as wrap up, make a plan for your pet. If you have your dog out with a handler or you're a handler with someone's dog, make sure you have that MAP plan because you need to know what the next steps are. Hopefully, if you are thinking of dropping your dog off at a shelter, put a MAP plan together. See if there's someone who you know who can take the dog so that the dog is transitioned in a better way without that loud noise, which actually changes their temperament altogether. And finally, if you have a dog, you just got a dog, even if the dog is a year old, not ideal, but go get some pet insurance. So until next time, kiss your dogs for me. Good night.